They say money buys everything, power, influence, even respect. But there's one thing Gregory Harlan could never buy back: his only daughter. Gregory was the kind of man newspapers loved to talk about. The man who built an empire from scratch. A cold, calculating figure in a world of corporate giants. On Wall Street, his name sent shivers. To his employees, he was untouchable. To his rivals, he was merciless. But inside that massive mansion on the hill, inside those gold-trimmed hallways, silence ruled, the kind of silence no fortune could fill. Charlotte Harlan had been his light, his only child, a free spirit who never cared about luxury cars or private jets. She wanted books, music, late-night conversations about dreams. But Gregory never noticed. He was too busy signing contracts, making deals, chasing numbers on a screen, until the night she was gone. A car accident. Sudden, brutal. No warning, no chance to say goodbye. For 3 years now, Gregory had lived in a strange prison of his own making. He carried his grief like a shadow. He never spoke about it, never allowed anyone to see him break. But every month, without fail, he would put on a black suit, leave his mansion, and drive alone to a quiet cemetery outside the city. It was his secret ritual, his way of pretending to make peace. On this particular morning, the autumn air was cold enough to sting. The trees around the cemetery had shed most of their leaves, leaving the ground covered in brown and gold. Gregory walked down the gravel path, his shoes crunching softly as he approached Charlotte's grave. A heavy bouquet of white roses hung from his hand, the same kind she loved as a child. But then, he froze. Someone was already there. A boy, no more than 7 years old, dark-skinned, wearing a simple hoodie a size too big, kneeling in front of Charlotte's stone. His tiny hands folded together, his lips moving as if he was whispering a prayer. Gregory's heart stuttered. Who was this child? Why was he here? For a moment, he simply stood, stunned. He was used to being alone in this place. He liked it that way. But the sight of this boy talking to Charlotte's grave was like watching a stranger walk into his locked bedroom. It was too personal, too shocking. "Hey," Gregory finally said, his voice low but sharp. The boy turned slowly. His big brown eyes looked up at the tall, intimidating figure before him. For a second, neither spoke. Then the boy rose to his feet, brushing dirt off his knees. "What are you doing here?" Gregory demanded. His tone was more accusation than question. The boy didn't answer right away. He stared back, calm but guarded, like someone who had been forced to grow up too fast. Finally, he said softly, "She was kind to me." Gregory blinked. "What?" "Your daughter," the boy replied. "She was kind. She saved me." Those words sliced through Gregory like glass. His daughter. This boy knew Charlotte? Gregory stepped closer, towering over him. "What do you mean she saved you? Who are you?" But the boy just looked away, silent, as if protecting a secret too big for his small frame. Gregory's jaw tightened. Billionaires were used to control, used to answers when they demanded them. But here, standing over this child at his daughter's grave, Gregory felt something he hadn't felt in years. Powerless. He wanted to grab the truth and shake it out of him. But the boy's quiet defiance stopped him cold. The wind picked up. The roses in Gregory's hand trembled. He realized his daughter may have lived a life he never truly knew, a life that connected her to this boy. And now the question burned in his mind. Why was this little black boy the one speaking to Charlotte when he himself, the father, barely knew who she really was? The silence stretched until it became unbearable. Finally, the boy whispered, "She told me I deserved love no matter what." Then he stepped back, turned, and walked away, leaving Gregory rooted to the ground. The billionaire watched him go, his chest heavy with confusion and something else he didn't want to admit: shame. For the first time in years, he didn't feel like the richest man in the cemetery. He felt like the poorest, and deep down, he knew this was only the beginning. That night, Gregory couldn't sleep. He tossed in his king-sized bed, the city lights blinking outside his window like restless eyes. The image of the boy kneeling at Charlotte's grave replayed in his head on a loop. Every word haunted him. She was kind to me. She saved me. How? When? Why didn't he know about this? By morning, his frustration had curdled into obsession. He called his driver, got into the back of his limousine, and returned to the cemetery. But the boy was gone. For the next 3 days, Gregory went back again and again, waiting. He told himself it was out of respect for Charlotte. But the truth was, he needed answers. On the 4th day, just as the sun was dipping low, he saw the boy again. Same hoodie, same quiet posture. He was placing a small toy car at the base of Charlotte's stone. A simple gesture, but the care in his movement stopped Gregory in his tracks. He approached slowly this time, his voice softer. "What's your name?" The boy glanced up. "Marcus." "Marcus," Gregory repeated, as though testing how it felt on his tongue. "Why are you here?" Marcus hesitated, then said, "She helped me once." "That's not enough," Gregory pressed. "What did she do for you?" Marcus shook his head. "I don't want to talk about it." Gregory's jaw clenched. His empire had been built on people giving him answers when he demanded them. But here, a boy barely old enough for 3rd grade was refusing him. "Do your parents know you're here?" Gregory asked. Marcus looked down. "My mom knows. She said it's okay." "Where's your father?" Marcus didn't answer. His silence was its own answer. Gregory studied him. The kid was hiding something, or maybe protecting Charlotte's memory from a man who had failed her in life. Something burned in Gregory's chest, a mix of anger, jealousy, and fear. How could a stranger child know more about his daughter than he did? He stepped closer. "Listen to me, Marcus. Charlotte was my daughter. I deserve to know what she meant to you. Don't keep secrets from me." The boy's eyes lifted, steady and unflinching. "She told me not to be afraid, even when people don't like me because of my skin." The words hit Gregory like a thunderclap. For a second, he couldn't speak. He had lived his whole life in boardrooms where race didn't matter because money drowned everything else. But here was his daughter, comforting a boy about something Gregory had never had to face. Before he could say more, Marcus picked up his backpack and walked off again. No rush, no fear, just the calmness of a child who knew he had said enough. Gregory stood frozen, questions boiling inside him. Who was this boy? How had Charlotte crossed paths with him? And why did it feel like Marcus was holding the final piece of his daughter's life, a piece Gregory never knew existed? That night, Gregory made a decision. If the boy wouldn't speak, he would find answers another way. He had power, resources, and connections. And for the first time in years, he wasn't chasing profits. He was chasing truth. He picked up the phone and called a man who never failed him, his private investigator. "Find out everything about a boy named Marcus," Gregory ordered. 7 years old, lives in this city. Start with the shelters. And as he hung up, Gregory whispered under his breath, "Charlotte, what did you hide from me?" The game had begun. Gregory Stanton was not a man who trusted his instincts. He trusted numbers, contracts, lawyers, and signed agreements. That was the world he knew. But when it came to Marcus, that little boy sitting at his daughter's grave, something inside him screamed that this was bigger than coincidence. He tried to brush it off, telling himself he was simply overthinking. Yet he found his nights restless, lying awake in the massive mansion where silence echoed louder than voices ever did. On the 3rd night after meeting Marcus, Gregory made a decision. If there was one thing money could still buy him, it was answers. He picked up the phone and called a man he hadn't spoken to in years, his private investigator, Harold Keene. Harold had worked with Gregory's company for over a decade, quietly digging up information about rivals, potential business partners, and at times, Even family members Gregory had suspected of betrayal. Gregory knew Harold was thorough, discreet, and ruthless when necessary. "Harold, I need you on something personal," Gregory said. His voice was low, as if the walls themselves might overhear. "Personal?" Harold's tone was curious. "That's unusual for you." Gregory didn't argue. He explained the strange boy, Marcus, who had appeared out of nowhere at his daughter's grave. He described Marcus's quiet manner, his cryptic answers, and the way he seemed to carry a weight far too heavy for a child. "I want you to find out who this boy is, who his family is, why he was there. Everything," Gregory ordered. "Consider it done," Harold replied. 2 days later, Harold returned with a folder. Gregory sat in his study, pouring himself a glass of scotch, as Harold placed the manila envelope on the table between them. "You were right to ask questions," Harold said gravely. Gregory opened the folder and began to read. The boy's name was Marcus Hill, age 7, born in Cleveland, Ohio. His mother, Danielle Hill, a single mother who had been in and out of low-paying jobs, often struggling to make rent. His father, listed as unknown. But there was more. Gregory's eyes stopped on a highlighted note. Marcus had been living in a shelter 2 years ago, after his mother was arrested for theft. But records showed she'd been released on probation. Gregory frowned. What did this child, raised in poverty, with no father, have to do with his daughter? Then Harold dropped a bombshell. "There's something else. Your daughter, Charlotte. She volunteered at that very shelter during her college years. She might have known this boy." The glass slipped slightly in Gregory's hand, spilling scotch onto the leather armrest. He barely noticed. His heart was pounding. Charlotte? Volunteering at a shelter? That didn't sound like the girl Gregory remembered. To him, she had been quiet, refined, and obedient to the image of perfection her mother demanded. But maybe he hadn't known her as well as he thought. Gregory clenched his jaw. If Charlotte had been involved with this boy, why had she kept it hidden? The unanswered questions twisted in his chest. "I want to meet the mother," Gregory said finally. The next day, Gregory's chauffeur drove him to the rough side of town, a place he hadn't set foot in for decades. The streets were cracked, lined with shuttered stores, graffiti-tagged walls, and children playing barefoot near broken sidewalks. It was here, among peeling paint and rusted fences, that Danielle Hill lived. Her apartment building was a run-down 3-story, with windows patched by cardboard and duct tape. Gregory stared at it from the back seat, disgust tugging at his face. But beneath the disgust was something else. A creeping sense of fear. Who was this woman? And why did his daughter's life, so short and precious, intersect with hers? Gregory took a deep breath. He would find out. Gregory now knows Marcus is connected to his daughter through a shelter she secretly volunteered at. But what kind of woman is Danielle Hill, and why would Charlotte keep that part of her life hidden from her father? Could Danielle be holding dangerous secrets about Charlotte's final days? What do you think Gregory is about to uncover when he meets Danielle? The knock on Danielle Hill's door was sharp and commanding, nothing like the polite tap of a neighbor. She knew before she even opened it that whoever stood outside was not here for casual conversation. When she pulled the door open, her eyes widened. Standing there in an expensive tailored suit, polished shoes that had never touched a dirty street, was Gregory Stanton, the billionaire. For a moment, Danielle froze. Then her jaw tightened. "I know who you are," she said coldly, "but I don't know what you're doing here." Gregory's sharp blue eyes scanned the dim, cramped apartment. The smell of fried food and stale cigarette smoke lingered in the air. Toys were scattered on the floor, dishes piled up in the sink. It was a different world from the marble floors and chandeliers he was used to. "I'm here about Marcus," Gregory said. Her body stiffened. "What about my son?" Gregory stepped inside without being invited, his presence filling the tiny living room. "He's been visiting my daughter's grave. I want to know why." Danielle's lips pressed into a thin line. For a moment she said nothing. Then she crossed her arms. Marcus doesn't owe you an explanation. He loved Charlotte. That's all that matters. Gregory's brows knitted. Loved? How could he possibly? He knew her better than you did. Danielle snapped. The words cut deep. Gregory felt his chest tighten, but his pride flared. What do you mean by that? Danielle's gaze softened, but only slightly. Your daughter. She wasn't the porcelain doll you and your wife tried to mold. She had a heart. She cared about people like us, the ones you wouldn't even glance at on the street. Gregory swallowed hard. He wanted to deny it, but Harold's report echoed in his mind. Charlotte at the shelter. Charlotte with Marcus. Charlotte leading a double life he had never known. She came here? Gregory asked, his voice almost a whisper. Danielle nodded. Many times. She read to Marcus. She bought groceries for families. She stood in this very room once telling me not to give up when I was at my lowest. And Marcus? He adored her. She was like the big sister he never had. Gregory's throat tightened. He suddenly saw his daughter in a way he never had before. Not the quiet girl at family dinners, but a young woman who had defied him to live by her own values. But Danielle wasn't finished. You want the truth? She said, her voice low but sharp. Charlotte told me she didn't trust you. She said you lived in a world of money and power where feelings didn't matter. That's why she never told you about us. She wanted to keep something pure, something untouched by your wealth. Gregory's jaw clenched. He could feel anger, guilt, and shame all battling inside him. How dare you, he muttered. You think you can stand there and tell me I didn't know my own daughter? Danielle didn't flinch. Maybe you didn't. For a long moment the room was silent except for the sound of Marcus playing quietly in the next room. Finally Gregory turned toward the door, but before leaving, he looked Danielle squarely in the eyes. This isn't over. Danielle's lips curved into a bitter smile. No, Mr. Stanton, it isn't. As Gregory stepped back into the hallway, the chill of her words followed him. For the first time in years, he felt powerless. Danielle claims Charlotte lived a secret life, one her father knew nothing about. Gregory is left shaken, wondering how much of his daughter's truth was hidden from him. But could Danielle be twisting the story for her own reasons? And what deeper secrets might Marcus still hold about Charlotte's final days? Do you believe Danielle is telling the truth? Or is she hiding something bigger from Gregory? Gregory Stanton was not a man easily shaken, but after his encounter with Danielle Hill, the walls he had built around himself felt thinner than ever. Back in his mansion, he wandered through Charlotte's old room. Nothing had been touched since the day she passed. Her books were still neatly stacked, her bed perfectly made, and her journals tucked away in the nightstand. He ran his hand over the desk, dust clinging to his fingers. For years, Gregory believed he had given Charlotte everything: luxury, security, opportunity. But Danielle's words haunted him. She didn't trust you. He sat heavily on the bed and whispered to the silence. Charlotte, what were you hiding from me? The next morning, Gregory visited the shelter Harold had mentioned. It was a squat brick building on the corner of a tired street, its walls covered with faded murals of smiling children. A hand-painted sign read, Hope Haven Community Center. Inside, the smell of soup and disinfectant filled the air. Volunteers bustled about, handing out food, sorting clothes, and helping families fill out forms. Gregory stood awkwardly at the entrance, a billionaire in a $1,000 suit, utterly out of place. A middle-aged woman with kind eyes approached him. Sir, can I help you? She asked. I'm looking for information, Gregory replied, unsure of how to phrase it. My daughter, Charlotte Stanton, did she ever come here? The woman's face lit up. Charlotte? Oh yes, we all knew her. Sweetest girl. She came every week for nearly 2 years, helped with homework, read stories to the children, even mopped the floors when we were short-staffed. Gregory blinked. 2 years? The woman nodded. She said this place gave her peace. His chest tightened. Peace? Why had Charlotte never told him this? Why had she hidden a part of her life so deeply? The woman led Gregory into a small office. There on the corkboard were photos of volunteers. And there she was, Charlotte, smiling with her arms wrapped around a group of children, Marcus among them. Gregory stepped closer, his hand trembling as he touched the edge of the photo. His daughter's smile looked freer than he had ever seen in their mansion. She loved those kids, the woman said softly, especially Marcus. She said he reminded her of innocence in a world full of greed. Gregory's throat ached. Greed. Was that how she had seen him? As Gregory left the shelter, Harold caught up with him outside. I dug deeper, the investigator said. There's more you should know. He handed Gregory another folder. Inside were records. Charlotte's name signed as a monthly donor. Receipts from her personal account for groceries, toys, and even school supplies for children at the shelter. But then came the shock. A letter. A handwritten letter Charlotte had left at the shelter, tucked into a donation box. It was addressed to Marcus. Gregory's hands shook as he unfolded it. Dear Marcus, I don't know what the future holds for me, but I want you to always remember that you are loved. Even when the world feels cold, you are not alone. You've given me more joy than I can ever explain. If something ever happens to me, promise me you'll keep visiting. And if you see my father, tell him I wanted him to know the real me. Gregory's knees nearly gave out. He leaned against the wall, clutching the letter to his chest. His daughter had left behind a secret world, and a message for him he had only now discovered. But what did Marcus really know? And why had Charlotte written as if she had feared something would happen to her? Charlotte's secret life at the shelter has come to light, and Gregory now holds a letter where she speaks directly to Marcus and indirectly to him. But why did she write as though danger was looming? Was her death really an accident? Or something more? Do you think Charlotte's passing was natural? Or is there a hidden truth waiting to explode? That night, Gregory couldn't sleep. He paced the mansion's hallways, the letter burning in his pocket like a hot coal. Every word Charlotte had written was etched into his mind. By morning, he made a decision. He had to speak with Marcus directly. No investigators, no middlemen, just the boy himself. He found Marcus at the cemetery again, sitting cross-legged near Charlotte's grave, tracing the letters of her name with his finger. The sight pierced Gregory's chest. Marcus, Gregory said softly. The boy looked up. His wide eyes carried both surprise and weariness, as though he expected to be scolded for trespassing. Why do you keep coming here? Gregory asked gently. Marcus hesitated, then whispered, Because she told me to. Gregory's breath caught. She told you? Marcus nodded. Charlotte said if she ever went away I should come here, that she would still hear me if I talked to her. Gregory knelt, his expensive trousers soaking in the damp grass. Marcus, did she ever say why she thought she might go away? The boy's lips quivered. He lowered his eyes. She was scared, Marcus murmured. She told me once that she felt like someone was watching her. She said she couldn't tell her family because they wouldn't understand. Gregory's blood ran cold. Someone was watching her, Marcus nodded again. One night she was walking me back from the shelter. A black car kept driving slow behind us. She squeezed my hand and told me not to look. She said it wasn't the first time she saw it. Gregory's pulse raced. His daughter had been living a life of compassion but also one of fear. Why didn't you say this before? Gregory asked. Marcus's small hands balled into fists. Because nobody listens to me. They just see a poor kid from the shelter. Charlotte listened. She always listened. The boy's words tore through Gregory like knives. For the first time he realized how blind he had been. Not only to his daughter, but to children like Marcus. Gregory's voice softened. Marcus, you're not invisible. I'm listening now. For the first time, Marcus's guarded expression cracked. Tears welled in his eyes. She said you weren't as bad as you seemed. She said you just didn't know how to love without money getting in the way. Gregory's throat tightened. His daughter had seen through him completely. Then Marcus added something that made Gregory's blood freeze. She gave me a journal. She said if anything ever happened, I should give it to you, but I hid it. I was scared. Gregory's eyes widened. A journal? Marcus nodded slowly. I can show you. But you have to promise. No yelling. No blaming my mom. Just listening. Gregory placed a trembling hand on the boy's shoulder. I promise. As they stood together at the grave, a chilling wind swept through the cemetery. Gregory felt, for the first time, that Charlotte's story wasn't just about loss. It was about secrets, ones buried deeper than her grave. And soon those secrets would come spilling out. Marcus has revealed that Charlotte feared she was being watched, and even left behind a journal meant for her father. Could this journal hold the truth about her mysterious fears and final days? What do you think Charlotte wrote in her secret journal? And who do you suspect was following her? Gregory had lived his life in glass towers, surrounded by people who spoke in numbers, contracts, and profits. But when Marcus mentioned a journal, it was as if a hidden door had opened in a house he thought he knew inside out. The next day, Marcus brought Gregory to his small apartment on the south side of the city. It was a cramped, dimly lit space with second-hand furniture and the faint smell of fried onions in the air. Danielle was at work, leaving Marcus in charge. The boy pulled a shoebox from under his bed. His hands trembled as he lifted out a worn leather notebook. The cover was scratched, the edges frayed. This is hers, Marcus whispered, pressing it into Gregory's hands. Gregory's chest tightened as he opened the journal. Charlotte's handwriting spilled across the pages, sharp, messy, emotional. Not the neat, polished notes of a socialite's daughter, but the raw thoughts of a young woman trying to make sense of her world. The first entries were simple. Reflections about helping at the shelter, joy in teaching Marcus to read, laughter at small things like kids chasing bubbles in the street. But as Gregory flipped further, the tone shifted. I love my father, but sometimes I wonder if he sees me, or just what he expects of me. Every dinner is about business deals. Every holiday is about appearances. I feel invisible in my own home. Gregory's throat constricted. Invisible. That word again. It was the same Marcus had used. Further down, another entry chilled him. Lately, I feel like I'm being followed. A black car, always parked near the shelter when I leave. I told Marcus not to be scared, but truthfully, I am. Should I tell Dad? No. He'll think I'm imagining things. He never takes me seriously. Gregory's hand shook as he turned the page. I want to believe my father has a heart beyond his money. I want to believe he can change. But what if he can't? If anything ever happens to me, I hope Marcus reminds him that love is stronger than wealth. Tears blurred Gregory's vision. His daughter had been crying out for him in her writing, and he hadn't been there to answer. Marcus touched his arm gently. She wanted you to read it. She said one day, you'd need it more than me. Gregory closed the journal, pressing it to his chest. For the first time, he wasn't holding just his daughter's memory. He was holding her truth. But the questions swirled like a storm. Who was in the black car? Why had Charlotte felt unsafe? Was her death really just a random car accident? Or had someone made sure she never came home? And now, with the journal in his possession, Gregory felt something he hadn't in years. Fear. Because if Charlotte had been targeted, Marcus might be next. Gregory now holds Charlotte's journal, packed with her deepest fears and a possible warning that her death wasn't an accident. But if she was being followed, who wanted her silenced, and why? Do you believe Charlotte's death was planned? And if so, who do you think was behind it? The journal had cracked Gregory's world open, but nothing could prepare him for what came next. 2 nights later, Danielle called Gregory in a panic. Her voice shook, as if the ground had crumbled beneath her. "Gregory, it's Marcus. He's gone." Gregory's blood turned to ice. "What do you mean, gone?" "He was playing outside after school. I only stepped inside for a moment. When I came back, he wasn't there. I've called everyone. Nobody's seen him." Gregory gripped the phone so hard his knuckles whitened. "I'm coming over." When he arrived at Danielle's apartment, police cars lined the street. Officers questioned neighbors while Danielle sobbed on the couch, clutching Marcus's small backpack. Gregory stormed in, his voice booming. "How could you let this happen?" Danielle shot up, her eyes blazing through her tears. "Don't you dare blame me. I've protected him every single day while you sat in your mansion feeling sorry for yourself. You think money gives you the right to judge? Where were you when Charlotte was out helping kids like him, all alone?" Her words cut deep. For a moment, Gregory saw Charlotte in her, fiery, unyielding, unwilling to be silenced. But grief overpowered guilt. "We need answers," Gregory said, lowering his tone. "Do you think it could be connected to—" He hesitated. "Charlotte's fears?" Danielle's face paled. "You mean someone could have taken him?" Before Gregory could respond, Harold, the investigator, rushed in. "We've got something. Neighbors saw Marcus talking to a man near a black SUV earlier today. The description matches someone from Danielle's past." Danielle stiffened. "What do you mean?" Harold flipped open a file. "Marcus's biological father, Derek Moore. He's been in and out of prison. Assault, theft, drugs. Word is he's been trying to get in touch with Danielle for money. Maybe he found another way." Danielle covered her mouth. "No, he wouldn't. Not Marcus." But Gregory knew the truth was rarely what people wanted it to be. Hours dragged on. The police organized a search, helicopters scanning the city, patrol cars circling the streets. Gregory paced like a caged animal, the journal still tucked under his arm. Every second Marcus was gone, he felt Charlotte slipping further away too. At midnight, his phone buzzed, a blocked number. He answered. A deep voice snarled, "If you want the boy back, you'll pay. 10 million. Tomorrow night. No police, or he disappears forever." The line went dead. Gregory froze, his heart hammering. For once, money wasn't just numbers. It was Marcus's life. Danielle saw the look on his face and fell to her knees. "What did they say?" Gregory clenched his fists. "They want ransom. 10 million. She gasped. "Are you going to pay it?" Gregory's eyes burned. "I'd give every dollar I have, but this isn't about money, it's about control. Whoever took him knows Charlotte meant something to Marcus. They're using him to destroy what's left of her legacy." The next day felt endless. Gregory's lawyers, his board of directors, even his security team begged him to call off the deal and let the police handle it. But Gregory was done being a man who hid behind others. For the first time, he wasn't thinking like a billionaire. He was thinking like a father who had already lost one child and couldn't bear to lose another. As night fell, Gregory prepared to deliver the ransom. He wore no suit, no watch, just plain clothes. Danielle begged to come with him, but he insisted she stay behind in case Marcus returned. At the drop-off site, a deserted warehouse near the river, Gregory stood alone with the duffel bag of cash. His heart pounded in his ears. A figure emerged from the shadows. Derek Moore, his eyes wild, his hands twitching as if battling demons within. "You came," Derek sneered, "for a boy that's not even yours." Gregory's jaw tightened. "Where is he?" "Safe. For now," Derek said, circling him like a predator. "But you don't get him back until I get what's mine. You've had everything your whole life. Me? Nothing. Well, tonight that changes." Gregory held his ground. "You don't know what it's like to have everything and still lose the only thing that mattered." Derek's eyes narrowed. For a brief moment, he seemed unsettled by Gregory's words, but then he smirked. "Hand over the money." Gregory tossed the duffel at his feet. "Now give me the boy." A small whimper echoed from the shadows. "Marcus." His voice cracked as he cried, "Mr. Gregory!" Gregory's chest nearly burst. He stepped forward, but Derek blocked his path. "This isn't over," Derek hissed. Gregory realized then, paying the ransom wouldn't guarantee Marcus's safety. If anything, it had just begun a dangerous game. Marcus has been kidnapped, and Gregory now faces Derek, the boy's unstable father, at a ransom exchange. But can Gregory trust a man who's already proven reckless and dangerous? Do you think Gregory should fight back to rescue Marcus or play along with Derek's demands until the boy is safe? Gregory had handed over the bag of cash with hands that didn't shake until the moment he thought of Marcus's face. The boy's small voice had echoed from the shadows, and Gregory had felt the old, hollow terror that had lived in him since Charlotte's funeral. He'd promised himself he'd never let another child slip away because he had been too proud or too busy. When Derek first stepped into the light, he looked smaller than Gregory expected, more angry than dangerous. But behind Derek, the warehouse mouth breathed darkness and the echo of empty metal. The air tasted like oil and old rain. Gregory kept his eyes on the man who had taken Marcus, because Marcus's life was bigger than an argument over money. It was about a second chance. "Where is he?" Gregory demanded. Derek smirked, slow and ugly. "You handed over the cash. Now we go." Gregory tossed the duffel toward Derek's feet and watched him pick it up. There was a second, thin as a blade, when Derek's hand reached into the bag, fingers riffling through bills. Harold's call had told him to keep his head down and be ready, but Gregory had no backup with him. This was his choice to fix. A muffled noise came from the far corner. Marcus. Relief and fury hit Gregory at the same time. He moved before he knew he would. His old life had taught him to plan, to delegate. This moment needed something else. Raw courage. He lunged. Derek reacted faster than Gregory expected. The man shoved Marcus behind him, like the boy was a shield. "You crazy rich fools always think you can buy your way out of everything," Derek spat. "You treat people like they're invisible until you need them." Gregory had spent a lifetime proving he wasn't like other men, yet here he was, face to face with a version of himself that had never been looked at hard enough. A man who'd chosen deals over dinners, success over presents. He felt that truth like a sting. "You don't know me," Gregory said, voice rough. "You don't know what I would do for what's right." Derek laughed and shoved him. The two men tumbled, cash scattering like brown leaves over the concrete. Marcus screamed. Gregory scrambled, driven by a fierce new thing, protectiveness, raw and immediate. He grabbed for Marcus and for Derek both, and for a breath it felt like the old world. Boardroom measured words had washed away entirely. A scuffle blew up. Derek's partner, someone Gregory hadn't seen earlier, moved to separate them, but Gregory saw Marcus slip toward the exit, tiny feet moving fast. Derek cursed and reached for the boy. Gregory caught his arm. They wrestled under the cold light. Harold, who had been outside watching a planned distraction, burst through an open door with two of Gregory's security men. The sudden rush of bodies and noise took Derek by surprise. He shoved Marcus away and tried to run, but a security man tackled him to the floor. A second man bolted for the door with Marcus, but Harold intercepted. The boy was safe. For a moment, Gregory's whole world was Marcus's face in the hallway light, dirt under his nails, tears streaking his cheeks, but alive and breathing. Marcus wrapped his arms around Gregory's waist as if that hug could right everything. Gregory felt something break and rejoin at once. Pain tore through his ribs. Someone had landed on him during the fall. He tasted metal. He tried to stand and nearly slipped, but Marcus held him and whispered, "Mr. Stanton, don't leave me." It was Charlotte's voice he heard there too, not in the boy, but in what Marcus reminded him of. Trust. Small acts of faith. The thing he had failed to give his daughter when she was alive. Gregory pressed his forehead to Marcus's hair and felt the world tilt. "I'm here," he said. "I'm not going anywhere." The police arrived minutes later, too late to feel like victory, but right on time to secure statements. Derek and his partner were taken away in cuffs, swearing threats that sounded thin and empty against the weight of the moment. Marcus rode in the back of a cruiser with Gregory and Danielle, who had arrived and clung to her son like a lifeline. Her face was pale, but there was a look in her eyes that made Gregory understand how much she had carried alone. In the hospital, as medics cleaned his cuts and wrapped a bandage around his brow, places in Gregory that had been numb for years began to ache with a new kind of feeling: relief, regret, and a fierce, stubborn hope. He watched Marcus sleep in a small chair by Danielle's side, hoodie pulled up, tiny chest rising and falling. Marcus woke and reached for Charlotte's journal, which Gregory had carried in his lap through the chaos. The boy handed it over without fuss, like passing a torch. "She wanted you to read it," Marcus said. "She said you'd understand." Then, almost under his breath, "She told me you had a good heart. She was right." Gregory's breath caught. He had expected debt and demand when he dug into his daughter's life. What he had found instead was a life she'd given away quietly, with no fanfare and no expectation of reward. Marcus's simple certainty cut through everything Gregory had used to protect himself. That night, in his hospital bed, a man who had once believed he could control everything realized he had been very wrong. The fight was over, but the work had only begun. Saving a boy didn't fix a father's past. It opened the door to a different life, one that would demand truth, humility, and real action. He closed his eyes and thought of Charlotte's handwriting. The pages had already started to change him. He didn't know how to be a father to someone who had been gone for years, but he knew one thing: for Marcus, for Danielle, for Charlotte's memory, he would try. Gregory paid with more than money. He risked himself to get Marcus back, and now he's injured and shaken but determined. The police have Derek, but could there be more behind Charlotte's fear? If you were Gregory, would you press the police to dig deeper into who might have been following Charlotte? Or would you focus on protecting Marcus and Danielle first? The day after the rescue, the world seemed both louder and quieter. News vans scouted the corners of Gregory's neighborhood, and his public relations team prepared a careful statement. A heartfelt act, a dangerous situation, gratitude for law enforcement. But the truth lived in quieter places. On the sofa where Danielle sat with Marcus, on the pages of Charlotte's journal, in the hospital corridor where Gregory had sat until his energy ran thin. Police were asking questions about Derek's connections and whether the kidnapping was purely opportunistic or had been planned by someone who knew Charlotte's routine. Gregory volunteered. He gave every detail he had. The black car Marcus had mentioned, the way the man had watched from a distance. The detectives took notes, folding his words into the broader case. But there was another case beating at Gregory's chest, the one written in Charlotte's careful scrawl. The journal had become a map, and the map had begun to show places Gregory had ignored: the shelter, the volunteers, the list of people Charlotte had trusted. It also had a short note at the end, one that looked like a directive rather than a plea. "If anything happens to me, please make what I did here last. Help the kids. Love them. Don't let my money close the doors I opened for others." Charlotte had changed the beneficiary on a small part of her trust months before she died. It wasn't a fortune, not by Gregory's standards, but it was a statement, an allocation to Hope Haven, with an instruction that it be used for education and safe spaces for kids like Marcus. Gregory felt a mixture of pride and shame reading it. Pride because his daughter's voice had found a way to bend reality even after she was gone. Shame because he hadn't listened when she was alive. He made a choice then. Not a press release, not a quick fix to soothe headlines, but a real shift. He would not only honor Charlotte's wish, he would expand on it. He met with Hope Haven's director, signed papers, and pledged a sizable donation that would secure the shelter for years. He created a foundation in Charlotte's name to fund programs for education and trauma support. He insisted that Danielle and Marcus be included in the planning, not as tokens, but as partners whose voices mattered. When he brought the proposal to his board, some of them bristled. "This is personal," one director said. "We need to think about the company first." Another called it a risky PR move. But Gregory had run the long lists of profit and consequence his whole life. This wasn't a measure of numbers. This was a measure of who he wanted to be from now on. "I don't want to be defined by my balance sheet," he told them. "I want to be defined by what we do with what we have." There was resistance, and there were angry emails. There were also people who called him a hero and people who suspected a staging. The outrage and praise collided, as it always did. But among those conflicting voices, one thing remained true. Marcus had a safe place now, and Charlotte's name would be the shelter's quiet heart. As Gregory worked on the foundation, he also dug into the police files regarding the black car. It turned out Derek wasn't acting alone. Surveillance footage at a gas station showed two men near the car in the days before Charlotte's death. One of them matched a description from an old witness statement, a frequent loiterer near the shelter who had asked questions about volunteers. The detectives followed the lead. A small web emerged, not of a single malicious person, but of people who preyed on vulnerable moments, people who watched and took advantage. Gregory sat in on interviews and shared Charlotte's journal with detectives. Her entries, once private, became evidence, a record of a young woman who had been brave in daylight and cautious in the dark. The officers on the case promised to follow every lead. For the first time, Gregory didn't want to hide from the investigation. He wanted it to be thorough, open, and unfiltered. Danielle, initially suspicious of Gregory's motives, began to change her tune as she saw him show up, not as a donor or a headline, but as a man who stayed. He attended parent meetings at Marcus's school. He sat on a community panel alongside Danielle to talk about resources for single parents. He learned how to load his own dishwasher, how to make cheap meals that Marcus liked. He learned that presence was less about grand gestures and more about showing up in small, ordinary ways. Marcus, cautious at first, warmed to Gregory with the slow trust of a child who had learned to test adults. One afternoon, Marcus asked a question that made Gregory laugh and cry in equal measure. "Do you think Charlotte would have liked me?" he asked. Gregory smiled, a little unsteady. "She didn't just like you. She believed in you." Marcus thought about it, and then looked at Danielle. He said plainly, "I think Mr. Stanton can be our family now." The word family hit Gregory like sunlight through a window that had stayed closed too long. He wasn't ready to adopt, to erase Danielle's role as Marcus's mother, or to force something that wasn't asked for. But he did begin to talk to lawyers about guardianship options and ways to ensure Marcus had stable support if Danielle ever needed backup. He wanted to remove every barrier that had kept people like Danielle from surviving. On the legal side, the case against Derek continued. He pled guilty to the kidnapping, but the detectives kept digging at the pattern of watchers. One night a call came in, a tip that the black car had been spotted near a man who'd once worked for one of Gregory's business partners. The implication was ugly, a link between people who moved easily in Gregory's world and the street-level trouble that had followed Charlotte. The detectives treated the lead carefully and opened a new line of inquiry. In the end, some doors closed and some doors opened. The evidence didn't point to a single mastermind, but it did point to negligence. People who had looked away as Charlotte moved between worlds, people who had thought her choices irrelevant, or who failed to heed the warnings in her writing. Gregory realized something hard. You could punish a few men for their crimes and still not fix the system that let those crimes breed. He had the money to step in, so he did. The Foundation's first major program focused on hiring community liaisons, people trained to work between shelter staff and law enforcement, to protect volunteers and children who might be visible targets. They set up safe walk programs, counseling, and a small scholarship in Charlotte's name aimed at kids who wanted to study social work. Months passed. The headlines quieted. The Foundation found momentum. Marcus started piano lessons paid for by the fund. Danielle returned to school with a stipend to finish her nursing certificate. Gregory learned to listen, really listen, and to let his life be reshaped by small domestic things: breakfasts at dawn, a hand to hold at a school recital, a quiet drive to the cemetery once a month that felt less like duty and more like a pilgrimage of memory and repair. On the anniversary of Charlotte's death, Gregory walked to her grave with Marcus and Danielle beside him. He laid white roses down as he always had, but this time, he let the boy go first. Marcus knelt, pressed his forehead to the cool stone, and whispered things only Charlotte could hear. Gregory stood behind them, and for the first time in years, he felt less alone. He understood now that legacy wasn't money alone. It was the choices that outlived you. Charlotte had left him a map. He had followed it, and in doing so, he found a path to a life that mattered. He knelt then, placing his hand over Charlotte's name, and spoke into the still morning air. "I see you now," he said, voice small and steady. "Through him. Through them. I see you." Gregory used his resources to fix what he could and changed his life to honor Charlotte. But change is messy and complicated. People doubt motives. Systems resist. Do you think Gregory has truly changed his heart? Or is this a powerful way to rebuild his image? What would you do if you had his resources and this second chance? Gregory thought the story had ended with the rescue, with Marcus asleep in his arms and Derek behind bars. But grief has a way of keeping secrets, and Charlotte's memory had not yet revealed its final truth. It began one quiet morning when Gregory sat at his desk, sipping black coffee and flipping through Charlotte's journal again. Tucked between two pages he had somehow missed, was an envelope with a faint seal. His hands trembled as he opened it, and inside he found a copy of a will Charlotte had written on her own. It wasn't official, not notarized or stamped, but it was in her handwriting, dated only a month before her death. The words were short, but powerful. "If I am gone, I want Marcus taken care of. Not by strangers, not by the system, by my father. Because even when he doesn't see me, I see the good in him. And I believe one day, he will see me too." Gregory froze. The air left his chest. His daughter hadn't just loved this little boy. She had trusted him, even when he had failed to earn it. She had placed a responsibility on him that went deeper than money. But the discovery carried another ripple. Danielle. She had raised Marcus, carried him through hard nights and empty kitchens. How would she feel knowing Charlotte had placed Gregory, an outsider, in her child's future? Gregory showed her the letter that afternoon. Danielle read it slowly, lips pressed tight, her eyes filled with tears, but not the soft kind. "So that's it? You get to walk in, claim him because your daughter wrote some note? I've been here every day of his life." "I'm not trying to take him away from you," Gregory said carefully. "Charlotte trusted me. I owe her. I owe both of you." Danielle slammed the paper down. "You owe him safety. You owe him stability. But don't think for a second that makes you his father." The argument boiled, quiet at first, but then fierce. Gregory wanted guardianship, wanted to make sure Marcus never faced the system. Danielle wanted independence, dignity, and respect. And Marcus, still small, still trying to understand, heard more than either of them realized. That night, Gregory found Marcus sitting in Charlotte's old bedroom. The boy clutched a photo of Charlotte and whispered, "Why can't you two just stop fighting? She wouldn't want this." The words broke Gregory open. He had spent a lifetime fighting for power, but here was a child begging him to stop. He promised Marcus then, "I won't let you feel torn. We'll find a way." But finding a way meant lawyers, paperwork, and the shadow of family politics. Gregory's siblings, long distant and quietly jealous of his wealth, caught wind of the will. They saw Marcus not as a boy, but as a threat, a reminder that Gregory might shift the family fortune away from them. One brother, Charles, called him late at night. "You're being played, Greg. This woman, Danielle, she's not what she seems. Don't hand over your money to strangers in the name of some dead girl's charity case." Gregory hung up before his temper snapped. But the seed of conflict had been planted. Rumors began to swirl, both inside his family and out. Some said Danielle was manipulating Gregory for Marcus's sake. Others whispered that Gregory was using Marcus as a redemption project, a way to polish a tarnished reputation. The truth, messy and human, lay somewhere between, but truth rarely wins against gossip. One morning, Marcus didn't show up for school. Danielle called in a panic. His bed was empty, his shoes gone. Gregory's heart seized with fear. Had Derek's people found a way to strike again? Or had Marcus simply run, tired of being caught in adult battles? Marcus has disappeared just as family politics and legal battles begin to brew. Do you think Marcus ran away on his own? Or is someone from Gregory's past trying to use the boy against him? Police were called immediately, and the search began. Danielle tore through the neighborhood, knocking on doors. Gregory called every contact he had, offering rewards, promising anything if they would just find the boy. Hours stretched like years. Every sound became a possible clue, every silence a punishment. Then, just as evening dipped the city in amber light, a call came through. Marcus had been spotted near the old cemetery, Charlotte's resting place. Gregory and Danielle rushed there, hearts pounding. And there he was, small against the endless rows of stone, sitting by Charlotte's grave with his knees pulled up. When he saw them, he didn't run, he didn't cry. He simply said, "She feels closer here. And you too. You're making her feel far away." Danielle fell to her knees, hugging him tight. Gregory knelt too, his eyes stinging. "Marcus," he said softly, "we're not trying to hurt you. We're trying to figure out how to do right by you." Marcus looked at him, eyes sharper than any child's should be. "Then stop fighting about me like I'm a prize. I'm not money. I'm not a project. I'm me." The cemetery air was heavy, filled with truths that hurt more than lies. Gregory realized then that Charlotte's hidden will wasn't about legal battles. It was about trust, about giving Marcus the security of knowing someone would always stand for him. But the night had one more twist to offer. As Gregory and Danielle prepared to leave, a stranger appeared from the shadows, a woman in her early 50s with tired eyes and a folder under her arm. "I knew Charlotte," she said, voice trembling. "I worked at the shelter. She trusted me with something before she died." Gregory stiffened. Danielle pulled Marcus close. "Who are you?" The woman held out the folder. Inside were documents, letters, receipts, a list of names, and at the top, in Charlotte's handwriting, was one chilling line. "If anything happens to me, look here. The truth about who was following me is inside." Gregory's blood ran cold. He thought Derek had been the end of it. He thought the threats had died with the arrest. But here, in the cemetery at his daughter's grave, a new door had opened, a door leading straight into the danger Charlotte had feared all along. Marcus clutched Gregory's hand, whispering, "Is it over?" Gregory looked at the folder, the stranger and the graves around them. "No, son," he said softly, voice heavy with dread. "It's just beginning." Charlotte's hidden papers suggest there was more to her death than anyone realized. Do you think Charlotte uncovered a dangerous secret at the shelter that led to her being watched? Or was someone inside Gregory's own world pulling strings all along? Gregory Sterling thought he had endured enough. Losing his daughter, confronting Danielle, nearly losing Marcus to the shadows of the city. But when whispers began to surface about a deeper network pulling strings behind Marcus's troubled past, he realized his nightmare wasn't over. It began with an envelope, no return address, slipped under his office door in the middle of the night. Inside, a photograph. A younger Marcus, maybe 4 or 5, standing outside a rundown building with other children, faces hollow, eyes vacant. On the back, a single word was scrawled in black ink. Property. Gregory's stomach dropped. He had his head of security trace the address in the photo. It led to a building in the outskirts of Detroit, long abandoned but once tied to a so-called rehabilitation program for troubled youth. The place had been shut down years ago after rumors of abuse, trafficking, and financial fraud. But here was Marcus, standing in front of it. Gregory's heart pounded. Could it be that Marcus had been part of something bigger, something sinister that Charlotte had been trying to expose? When he confronted Marcus about the photo, the boy's body stiffened. His voice shook as he admitted, "That's where I was before Charlotte found me. They weren't helping us, Mr. Sterling. They were using us." Gregory pressed for more. Marcus hesitated, then whispered, "People paid money. Lots of it. Kids like me, we were nothing but a product." It hit Gregory like a freight train. His wealth, his billion-dollar empire, built on steel, glass, and ambition, suddenly felt meaningless compared to the invisible chains wrapped around this child's past. Determined to uncover the truth, Gregory dug deeper. The records from the program had been sealed, hidden behind layers of legal red tape. But money has a way of opening locked doors. What he found chilled him. Shadow accounts, offshore transfers, and the same last name appearing again and again in the paperwork, Danielle's father. The pieces fell into place. Danielle's hostility toward Marcus, her desperate attempts to cut him off from Gregory. It wasn't just prejudice, it was protection. Her family had been involved in the very network that exploited Marcus. Gregory sat in his study, the firelight flickering against the photo of his daughter. He clenched his fists, torn between rage and sorrow. Charlotte had uncovered this truth before she died. She had volunteered at that shelter not only to save Marcus but to gather evidence. Maybe her accident wasn't an accident at all. The thought gnawed at him until he could no longer sit still. He had to confront Danielle again, not as a father grieving or a man wounded, but as a protector ready for war. But before he could act, Marcus spoke up. His eyes carried both fear and determination. "Mr. Sterling, they're watching us. If you move too fast, they'll hurt us both. We have to be careful." The boy's words weren't just a warning. They were a revelation. Marcus knew more than he had let on. And for the first time, Gregory began to wonder, was Marcus only a victim, or was he also the key to dismantling everything? "Tell me, what do you think? Could Charlotte's death have been tied to what she discovered? And can a child like Marcus truly hold the key to unraveling such a dark empire?" The storm broke that evening, not in the skies above Detroit, but in the heart of Gregory Sterling's home. After hours of silence, Marcus approached him with trembling hands clutching a small box. Inside lay a stack of folded letters, worn and smudged with fingerprints. "Charlotte told me to keep these safe," Marcus said. "She said if anything happened to her, I should show them to you." Gregory's breath caught as he opened the first letter. It was in Charlotte's handwriting, her familiar looping script. "Daddy, if you're reading this, it means my fight cost me everything. But I couldn't stay silent. The program Marcus escaped wasn't just a shelter. It was a marketplace. Kids vanished into its system, and the people behind it are powerful. I kept notes, photos, contacts. Marcus knows more than he realizes. Protect him, because through him, you'll find them. And when you do, make sure they can never hurt another child again." Gregory's hands shook as he read. His daughter's voice leapt off the page, alive with courage and sacrifice. She had died fighting a war he didn't even know existed. Marcus pulled out another letter, this one addressed to him. "You're not just a survivor, Marcus, you're a witness. You carry the truth inside you, don't be afraid to speak it. Someday my father will understand." Tears welled in Marcus's eyes. "She believed in me, Mr. Sterling. She said I wasn't just a lost kid. I was part of something bigger." Gregory felt the ground shift beneath him. His daughter had entrusted this boy with a mission, and by extension, that mission was now his own. But then came the most shocking revelation. Marcus hesitated before whispering, "I wasn't just at that place. They made me deliver messages. I heard names, dates, plans. I didn't understand it then, but now I remember. I think Charlotte wanted me to tell you. Gregory leaned in, heart hammering. Marcus, what do you remember? The boy swallowed hard. Danielle's father wasn't just involved. He was running it. The room spun. Every suspicion, every gut feeling Gregory had suppressed now solidified into truth. Danielle's family wasn't just corrupt. They were orchestrating a network that preyed on children. Gregory slammed his fist onto the desk, fury coursing through him. His daughter had died because she got too close to this truth. And Marcus, this small, fragile boy, carried the last fragments of evidence needed to bring them down. But before Gregory could speak, the security alarms blared. Windows rattled. The estate's gates had been breached. Gregory grabbed Marcus, pulling him close. Stay behind me. Shadows moved outside, figures approaching with purpose. They weren't here for him. They were here for Marcus. The conspiracy had finally come knocking at his door. Let me ask you, if you were Gregory, would you risk everything, your fortune, your safety, even your life, to protect Marcus and expose the truth? Or would you try to bargain with the devils at your door? The night the gates fell felt like the end of everything. Gregory Sterling, once untouchable, once insulated by glass towers and iron gates, now stood exposed. His wealth could no longer protect him. His only shield was the trembling boy at his side, the boy his daughter had died to save. The estate's alarms wailed as figures in dark clothing stormed across the lawn, armed, coordinated, efficient. This wasn't a burglary. It was an extraction. They wanted Marcus. Gregory's instincts as a father, sharpened by grief, fueled by fury, kicked in. He pulled Marcus toward a hidden passage built during his renovations, a narrow tunnel leading to the old wine cellar beneath the estate. As gunfire cracked in the distance, they slipped through, shutting the heavy door behind them. The tunnel was dark, damp, and smelled of stone, but it bought them time. Gregory whispered, "Stay close. Don't speak." Marcus nodded, his small hand gripping Gregory's like a lifeline. At the cellar's exit, they emerged into the woods behind the estate. The night was cold, the wind cutting through Gregory's coat, but his mind was ablaze with determination. They couldn't hide forever. They had to strike back. Marcus tugged at his sleeve. "Mr. Sterling, I know a place. Charlotte showed me once when she said secrets are safest in plain sight." Guided by Marcus's memory, they made their way to an old church downtown, abandoned, crumbling, forgotten by the city. Inside, beneath a loose floorboard near the altar, they found a locked box. Marcus smiled through his fear. "She told me you'd know what to do when the time came." Gregory broke the box open. Inside were USB drives, photos, documents, Charlotte's evidence, names, dates, offshore accounts. Enough to dismantle the network piece by piece. Enough to implicate Danielle's father and every accomplice hiding in the shadows. Gregory felt his daughter's presence in that moment, as if her spirit whispered, "Finish what I started." But as dawn approached, the sanctuary was shattered by footsteps. Danielle herself walked down the aisle, flanked by two of her father's men. Her face was pale, her eyes swollen from tears, but her voice was cold. "You should have stayed out of this, Gregory. This fight isn't yours. Hand over the boy and no one else has to die." Gregory stepped forward, shielding Marcus. "This fight became mine the day you covered for monsters. The day my daughter died because of your family's greed." Danielle's composure cracked. Her lips trembled. "You don't understand. My father controls everything. Judges, police, politicians. If you go against him, you'll lose everything." Gregory's voice thundered in the hollow church. "I already lost everything, and I won't lose him too." The standoff escalated. The men reached for their weapons. Gregory braced himself for the end, but Marcus stepped out from behind him, his voice breaking yet strong. "You'll never shut us up. Charlotte believed in me, and now the whole world will hear the truth." The boy's defiance stunned them all. In that split second of hesitation, Gregory lunged, knocking one gun aside. Chaos erupted. Shouts, fists, the crack of gunfire echoing off the stained glass windows. When the dust settled, Danielle's men lay incapacitated, and Danielle herself crumpled on the steps, sobbing. Gregory, chest heaving, turned to her one last time. "You can choose to be different from your father," he said quietly. "But if you stand with him, you'll fall with him." Danielle covered her face, shame written across every line. She didn't speak another word. With the evidence secured, Gregory made a call that would change everything. Not to the local police, too compromised, but to federal agents who had been circling the network for years, waiting for one solid witness. By the time the sun rose, the Sterling estate was swarming with agents. Danielle's father was in handcuffs before noon. Politicians resigned, bank accounts froze, and headlines across the nation blared the story of a billionaire, a little boy, and a daughter's fight for justice from beyond the grave. But justice came at a cost. Gregory's reputation took a beating. His board questioned his decisions. His fortune dwindled as he poured resources into helping survivors of the network. Yet for the first time in years, he felt at peace. The gravestone of Charlotte Sterling no longer felt like a place of loss, but a place of legacy. Gregory visited often, always with Marcus by his side. Together, they tended the flowers, wiped away the dust, and spoke to her as if she could still hear. One evening, as the sun set and the sky glowed gold, Marcus placed a small drawing against the stone. A stick figure of a girl with angel wings holding hands with a boy. Beneath it, the words, "Thank you, Charlotte." Gregory's throat tightened. He rested a hand on Marcus's shoulder. "She saved you, and you saved me." The boy looked up, tears shining in his eyes. "We saved each other." The wind rustled through the trees, carrying with it a peace that had been absent for too long. Gregory finally allowed himself to smile. A real, unguarded smile. Charlotte's fight was over. Her mission through Marcus and her father was fulfilled. But the story wasn't just about her, or about him. It was about every child who had been silenced, every soul crushed under the weight of power and greed. And it was about the courage to fight back even when the odds were impossible. Gregory Sterling walked away from the grave that night not as a billionaire, not as a man broken by grief, but as a father reborn through love, sacrifice, and redemption. And Marcus, the boy once forgotten, once branded as nothing more than property, now stood as living proof that even the smallest voices could topple giants. The world would never be the same again. If you were in Gregory's shoes, risking your wealth, your safety, and even your legacy, would you have fought the same way for justice, or would you have chosen silence to protect yourself? If this story moved you, don't just click away. Hit that subscribe button so you never miss the next powerful story. Give this video a thumbs up if you believe every child deserves love and protection. And most importantly, share this video with someone who needs to hear it. Because these lessons aren't just stories, they're life-changing truths. Tell me in the comments, what would you have done if you were in Gregory's shoes? Would you fight against power, or stay silent to protect yourself? Your voice matters here.